guy still out there?
What's up with you and this clown all of a sudden? You're like obsessed.
They never found his body. What if he decides to come back here?
I wouldn't worry about it.
Hi, Damon. How are you doing, sir?
Good, buddy. How are you?
I'm good. Congrats on the movie. I mean, it just came out yesterday, so you must be really thrilled now. I mean, obviously you've already had two festivals to kind of soak it in a little bit now, but yesterday must have been like a kind of like to let it on the world must have been something else entirely, no?
It is, man. It finally just started to sink in. I'm finally starting to enjoy it because I've been super anxious this whole time. But last night was the first sort of public screening that there was no real. I mean, I went with a couple of cast and crew members, but it wasn't like our red carpet or anything. It was just playing at the local AMC that's like a block away from my apartment. So we just walked in like your everyday average Joe, and we sat in the back and watched it with an audience, and that was pretty wild. And then when I got home, it was sort of blowing up on Twitter and trending, and I was up till 5 o'clock just reading tweets and like, oh my god, like people are really loving it. So it's
I was going to say, because when it, I mean, I had the world premiere in London at the FrightFest. I wasn't able to go, but I was on social media kind of when the news came out, and it was just went crazy for the film. I mean, there was so much demand after the first film. It just went crazy. And then obviously, I mean, a lot of people are saying, wow, 2 hours is a long time. And I'm sure you've had lots of people not complaining, but asking you about that, no? But I mean, it went down really well. I mean, I just recently went to watch Smile the other day, which is like just over 2 hours as well. And for me, it didn't feel 2 hours at all. And the same with this one, it just kind of flew through. As long as the pacing's right, it really doesn't matter.
I think so. And I was very conscious of that when writing it. I wasn't conscious of the runtime when I was writing the script. But, I said this before that a lot of classic slashers, they have purposeful, like they have filler. I mean, you're just trying to get to the kills and that's it. I mean, that's what they did with Terrifier 1. Terrifier 1 has filler in it, basically. Part 2 doesn't. Like, I was really took a lot of time to craft this story, and every scene, like I had to make sure that it was pushing the narrative forward, or you were learning something new about a character, or there was a new dynamic, a new piece of information was being thrown about, at you. And I had to make sure that we didn't go too long without something crazy or Art the Clown popping up. So maybe just when you feel like you might be dipping into a lull, it's like something radical happens and you're just pulled right back into the movie. So I tried, I didn't realize until I got into the editing room how long the movie was, and then I started getting nervous because I knew that this is an unprecedented runtime for a slasher. So there were a couple of scenes that I didn't even bother editing. I just didn't even bother to see how they played out because I knew they weren't going to drive the narrative. So I did try and chip away, and I'm sure I could have chipped away a little more, but it wasn't going to alter the overall effect of the movie. Yeah.
I mean, obviously, you said there that you wanted to kind of up the ante a little bit, but also kind of make it more kind of psychological and character focused now. Knowing what the fans have come off in the previous film, obviously we've been with Art a few times, obviously before the actual film itself. But actually kind of knowing what the fans loved about the previous film, writing more character kind of content there must have been quite you must have kind of second guessed yourself quite a bit to think. I imagine you think a lot about what your fans how they might take that, because I know that you're very much a believer in reading all the kind of reviews and what people say on social media, etc. No?
Right, absolutely. I'll read everything. I want to know what people think. I want to know what I'm doing wrong. I mean, if you just grab a consensus, you can tell 1,000 people say the same thing. You can't just be like, oh well, fuck them. I mean, you have to be like, all right, I could maybe grow here or rectify this somehow. And people wanted a more intricate story. They wanted to get behind their protagonists a little more, so that was really important. To me, my safety net in this movie was Art the Clown and was the kills. Like, there was no moment where I thought I was going to let the audience down with Art, or because I feel so secure writing that character and delivering the goods in the gore department, even though now I knew we had to really try and top that hacksaw scene. So that was a little nerve-wracking because it's like, where do you go from there? There's only so many things to do to the human body. So but yeah, to me, the big risk was injecting this new sort of family dynamic. So essentially a drama going on simultaneously in this horror film, and this big supernatural element that was not in the first Terrifier. That is a huge part of this movie, and not even a horror element. I mean, there's like a mystical, mythical element to this movie that some people are going to be like, what the hell is this? Where is this coming from? But yeah, I mean, I love it, and it's me. I wanted to sort of marry these sword and sorcery 80s films that I grew up loving, like little bits of Excalibur and Red Sonja. I mean, the Sienna character, Red Sonja has been one of my favorite movies and characters since I'm like 3 years old. So I knew I wanted to have this sort of Red Sonja type character as a final girl for years. So that was the risk, though. It was putting that new spin on this movie. But like I said, my safety net was having Art do everything you loved Art doing in part one. Hopefully it worked, you know?
No, I did for me anyway, definitely. Yeah. I mean, obviously you said that you got your safety net was Art. I understand that David, he felt, I was reading that he felt quite liberated this time around, because the first time around, it was kind of his first time playing the character, no? Having to kind of mimic almost in a way what had gone before to make sure that kind of the fans were going to be happy.
Sure.
How did that play out this time around? Because he'd been in Art's skin for the whole feature film, the first one. How did that play out in terms of you working with him before you went to shoot it, maybe even the writing scene as well, and then kind of him kind of letting loose a bit more, maybe a bit more so than, or maybe a lot more so than the previous film?
You know, I didn't really notice it, honestly. It felt it was the same to me working with him. I think just internally, Dave, like, I didn't realize that he was a little, like, maybe unsure of himself, and because he killed it. He knocked it out of the park. That was never a question. But yeah, like part two, he likes to say that Art's a lot more confident in this one because he's supernatural, he's resurrected, he feels a little more invulnerable at this point. But I thought Art was very confident in part one.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah.
And, but yeah, I mean, we had the same exact relationship going into this one. It's, I write the scenes, I know what I want Art to do, even down to facial expressions. We'll do a couple of takes, and then I let Dave go off, and he gives me all this wonderful improvisation, and then I could choose in the editing room like which ones I wanna pick. So you could really sort of conduct the character when you get to the editing room. If I want to make him more funny, goofy, more animated, or if I want him just like the old school stoic slasher, silent. I mean, it's a cool, symphony we could play with that character, which is fun. But we have a lot of fun on set with this character. It's
oh cool, yeah, I can imagine you do. Yeah. I mean, you mentioned that there's obviously this kind of the supernatural element that you bring into the story without giving too much away. But at the same time, you keep it as grounded as possible, because you don't really want to kind of. I know that one of the touchstones for this film was Dream Warriors and Nightmare on Elm Street 3, which kind of is very supernatural in a way, no? But it's not all that grounded, except when we're in kind of like the psychiatrist hospital, no?
Right.
So how did you kind of find that balance to make sure that it didn't kind of turn into slapstick, unauthentic kind of story, bringing all of this into the fold?
Right. The key is just keep your characters grounded in reality, and they have to react as if this insane shit is happening to them. Like, how would I react if this was happening to me? And I think that's the key, because I like all types of horror movies, all different tones. But personally, I like ones that are serious and straight the most. But, to me, it was important to bring Art back from the dead and just focus on this supernatural thing, because eventually all your slashers, they wind up becoming supernatural unless you keep swapping out the villain or something like that. Because if you have these characters, your villain and your protagonist going at it for your climax, someone's getting delivered a death blow, and it's going to happen sooner or later. So I would say just let's do it sooner. Let's get it over with. Let's have them be supernatural, but let's not gloss over it. Now let's really explore that, where other people kind of just, other filmmakers might say, well, look, that's just the lore. Killers, they come back. It's what they do. It's what the boogeyman does. It's like, well, let's explore that a little more. What is this force driving this character? I mean, that's a big deal. And also, how do you combat that with your hero now? I mean, is at odds, clearly. So in this film, you have a supernatural force driving Sienna as well and working its way into her reality. So to me, that was the fun of this movie, is both characters on pretty much the same trajectory was exciting.
And I think something that could help with the longevity of this, if it does turn into a kind of a really long franchise, is the fact that he doesn't speak, which obviously there are other slashers horror icons that don't speak, but they don't have kind of facial expressions. And then on the other hand, we had like Chucky and Freddy, who kind of things just kind of got very hyperbolic because they just kind of because they could speak so much and it just didn't frighten people anymore. And it just kind of got a bit out of hand. So I think you could go a long way with that because of the fact that you've got this great character who can kind of show what he's feeling, but leave you kind of unaware of what he's going to do next and kind of get away with it for quite a few more films, no?
Yeah, I think so. I hope so. I've been saying, and when I say things like this, I don't mean we're literally putting ourselves on this level, but I consider art to be sort of like a silent Freddy Krueger. That was sort of like the last combination that wasn't quite done yet, where you have the silent character, but that has the personality. Art's so expressive and charismatic, and you could almost tell what he would be saying. You could almost fill in the dialogue sometimes, which is really fun. And I think that's why people gravitate toward him so much. But one of my biggest fears is that we sort of jump the shark, or we go into that level where the character isn't scary anymore. That's my biggest fear. So I always tell Dave, and I say, we can go far, we could play around, but at the end of the day, the core of this character has to be horrifying and threatening. So it's important to me that this being a horror movie and being scary first and foremost is the most important thing.
So I mean, obviously, you mentioned that you've got a final girl there that you wanted for quite a long time. I think you've been thinking about having a final girl in there for about 15 years or so now. How did you come up with Lauren? Because I believe that it was just you instantly clicked with, and you knew exactly she was the one for the role. No,
instantly. There was never a runner-up for that part. We were sifting through reels, actress reels, and as soon as I saw Lauren, I just loved her presence. And then I saw her, she was a martial artist. So I said, ooh, that's great, because this is a really physical role. So especially the whole, final half hour or 35 minutes of the movie is her and Art really going at it. So I said, that would be fantastic. And her acting was just stupendous. I mean, she was so talented. So I said, look, we have to have her come in and read with some of the other actors that I was thinking about casting. And she was amazing. As soon as I sat her down with Elliot Fulham and they started reading together, I just said, these are my guys. I mean, this is it. This is Sienna and Jonathan right here. And I know they're going to take my script and elevate the material so much further. So yeah, it was exciting. It was essential to find them. So lucky.
Yeah, definitely. And then something that was really essential, of course, is I mean, you worked in special effects and makeup beforehand. You kind of cut your teeth in that now. I think for this film, you wanted to get a full-blown team, to work on it, and that kind of fell through. And so there was only you and the producer that ended up doing it. That must have been an absolute nightmare, no? I mean, obviously it must have been great fun, but an absolute nightmare in terms of logistics.
Absolute nightmare. I said, what are we going to do? I mean, we have to postpone. And he said, we can't keep postponing. We just have to jump in. We have to shoot. We'll figure it out as we go. And that's one of the main reasons why it took so long to finish, because we would shoot up into a point. And then when it came to a kill scene, we'd have to stop and break. So the whole movie was stop and go. We'd have to take off a week or two, build all of the effects, just Phil and I, up into, and go shoot it and then continue. And then when the next kill, and as you can see, there's a lot of kill scenes in this movie. And I think we only had maybe 40% of the effects ready for this film. So it was intense. It was scary. But we made it happen. I mean, and then we got hit with COVID, and, clearly not a blessing. COVID was horrible, but we used it to our benefit, because we started filming one of the biggest kill scene in the movie, and it was not coming out to my liking in terms of the special effects. And I said, there's no way this is even touching the hacksaw scene from part one. I said, everybody is expecting the next hacksaw scene. So when we got hit with COVID, I said, I'm going to reconfigure this entire kill scene. Now I have all this time. So we're going to build all these special effects and all these little moments that make up this entire operatic kill scene now, if you will. I mean, it's a big piece. It's the one that everybody talks about now when they see the movie. But you got to turn those negative situations into a positive somehow. But I knew there was no way we could let the fans down when it came to this big kill scene they were expecting.
Absolutely. We're running out of time. So just to finish off, then obviously I can see that you've got some ideas in your head there for taking this even further. I know when you released the first one that you said that you've got you think it'd take a couple of films to tell Art's story. More or less in length, but I imagine you've probably got, now that COVID's come past and you've done 2 films now, I imagine that's something that you kind of want to carry on, maybe even hit the ground running, or would you prefer to kind of dig your teeth into something else before you come back to art again?
That's a good question. I don't. It's probably a safe bet to make a different movie. In case that's a failure, then I could always fall back on Terrifier. But I don't know. That's not really the way I approach it. It just has to be what I'm feeling. But I already have a whole treatment for Terrifier 3. Like I know where I'm going to take that story. I mean, I know some people, it's a criticism from some people that there's so many unanswered questions after you see Terrifier 2, but purposely done. I mean, it's not just arbitrary stuff that I'm throwing in that movie. But I don't like when, I mean, a lot of slashers, they just become redundant, and it's just the story's told. There really isn't a story to tell anymore. And it's like, let's just figure out a way to resurrect the killer and have him kill another group of people. Like me, I want to start exploring and unraveling this whole mythology, this whole mystery, and start giving you pieces as we're going. And I would love for Terrifier as a franchise, whatever it winds up being, to just be like a solid piece that you can enjoy with these beautiful arcs, and you have a beginning, middle, and end, and you walk away saying, all right, that was a satisfying experience, instead of falling into those traps of, you have these like multi dimensions, and you have to carry different timelines
or whatever.
When you go to space, and I mean, not to say that I'll never fall into that trap. Way more talented filmmakers than I have fallen into that trap. I'm sure all kinds of business and financial things get in the way, but I'm really, at this point, I'm going to try and maintain as much artistic integrity and try not to fall into that trap. So that's where my head is now.
That's brilliant. Well, then we're out of time. I had millions of questions, but it's a great film. I can't wait to for everyone to see. When everyone's starting to see it already. It's out over there already, but I can't wait for everyone to see it over in the UK as well soon. And I hope to speak to you again sometime soon about another project or another Terrifier movie.
Thanks, buddy. I would love to, man. This was a pleasure. Thank you so much.
All right. All the best. Take care, man. All the best. Have a good day.